So that is everything for today. Hey guys, welcome back to our channel. If you're new here, I'm Kelsi. I'm the creator of Bite-Sized Ancient History and I'm currently a student at the University of Cambridge. So please feel free to stick around, like and subscribe to get some study tips. So I don't know about all of you, but ever since the first lockdown started, I downloaded TikTok. I'd never heard of it before and now I've ended up spending a lot of time on it, more time than I probably should. But there has been some useful things that I've managed to find. So today I thought I would review some of them and try them out so that you don't have to.
If you've been studying for hours but feel like you're forgetting everything immediately after, I have a solution for you. In the 1800s, a German psychologist, Hermann Ebbinghaus, showed that we forget 50% of everything we learn within the first hour. He called it the forgetting curve. Later studies showed that if you space out the information you're learning, you will remember more details and forget things slower. So use the following formula for some memory magic. At the end of the study session, spend 5 minutes reviewing what you had just learned. Do it again after a short break. Do it again at the end of the day. And the next morning after you learned, review the material a week later, and then review every couple of weeks until it sticks permanently.
So I absolutely love this first video. I love the fact that she's managed to back it up with some actual studies and information so it doesn't look like it's just somebody claiming to know stuff when they don't. And I was lucky enough to study psychology at GCSE level, which isn't a lot, but we did kind of cover memory and how the storage systems in our brain work when revising certain things, which is really useful, obviously, when it comes to doing university work. And what she's saying is exactly right. The key thing is, if you're trying to learn something, like when you've read through a long piece of text, you really want to write down some key points and summary notes of what you've learned and what you think is going to be important. And then rather than having to read through that entire text again, you can just come back to those key notes. And then obviously the key is, as she said there, is coming back to it regularly. So especially if you're perhaps doing a language and you're doing the vocab and grammar, you want to be coming back to it almost daily until it has been stored into your long-term memory. The one thing I would say here is that perhaps this won't work during term times when you don't have an upcoming exam, because if you're trying to do this with all of your modules and work, it's gonna be a lot and you're not going to be able to keep it up for all of them. So I tried it out specifically with a seminar that I have coming up this week, and I had a lot of text to read through. So what I would try and do at the end of each text is write these key summary points and review what I've done and then look over it the next morning. However, because it was only a week before the seminar, I didn't have time, like she said, to look at it every other week and so on. But it really did help me recall the information when it came to the actual seminar.
Is the most powerful way to study anything. All of your flashcards are going to start off in pile 1, but every time you get a card right, you move it up 1 pile. And then every time you get a card wrong, you move it all the way back to pile 1. Good luck on your exams and follow for more college cheat codes.
So I really like the idea and the theories behind the technique in this video. And it is kind of what I've employed across the years when I, like I said, do vocab work or revision for an essay exam coming up. However, the way I do it and have found over time to be the most effective is just you have your main pile that you work through, and then if you come across one that you don't get right, you put it to the side and you keep doing that and then keep putting the correct ones into a different pile. And then I'll force myself to go over that pile of things that I didn't get correct straight away. And if any of them become a reoccurring problem, then I will leave it in a separate pile. Whilst I love the idea of having like 5-6 different sections of how many times you need to look at it, it's not that realistic because, I don't know, unless you have a humongous desk to fit everything that you need in, you're not going to be able to have the space to store it in that way. But if you do, that's great, and this method might work really well for you. Just practically, I prefer to just split it into 2 piles.
Study hacks that got me from a 2.9 to a 4.0 GPA. Right after lecture, or before you go to bed, review all of your class notes from that day. Don't go to bed without doing this.
Okay, so I love again in this video how we're focusing on how you need to review the information that you've just learned in order for your brain to really process it and store it in your long-term memory. I think that's absolutely fantastic. The one caution I would just say with this is that if you are going to do it just before you go to bed, don't make it actually just before you go to bed. Do it at about 8 or 9 p.m. and then at least allow yourself an hour or two to turn your brain off from that work mode. Otherwise, you're going to be transferring that information into your bed in a non-helpful way, and it will just be going round in your head and stopping you from sleeping. And it's the sleep that you need in order to process it. So I would definitely say review it at the end of each lecture and in the evening, but not explicitly just before you go to bed. Otherwise, you could end up doing more damage than good.
3 things you want to know if you want to become a better studier and test taker. The last one is genius. Something small you can start doing when you're studying is actually studying at night, preferably right before you go to sleep. I read and I find personally that if you study before going to sleep, you're going to retain a lot more information. It's kind of like muscle memory. If you learn a dance routine before going to bed, you're going to wake up knowing it a lot better the next day. Same with learning lines or studying for a test. Number 2, chewing gum when you're studying and then chewing the same flavor when you're taking the test is going to improve your memory a ton. I haven't tried this one yet, but it sounds like it should work. Make sure you use the same flavor. And last and final best tip for studying. When you're studying something, try to gain as much knowledge about it as you can. And then in order to seal it in and lock it in your brain, try teaching it to yourself as if you're going to give a class on it. Because if you know it well enough to be able to teach someone else, you're able to take the knowledge that you have and able to give it out. It's helping your brain use that information in a new way, and it helps you retain that knowledge.
So the first thing this video mentions is that it's useful to study at night. And for some people it definitely is. Your brain is awake and active at that time. However, if you're more of an early riser and you've started first thing in the morning, then you're probably going to be really tired when it comes to the evening, and you're just going to need that time off, and it will be that time when your brain's relaxing that it's actually managing to process the information that you've learned. But if you do work well in the evenings, then that's great. Follow this tip and I'm sure it will work well. If not, just revert to the prior tip where you're reviewing that information at some point in the evening. And next she mentions this really novel idea of chewing gum whilst you're studying and then chewing gum in the exam. And I completely get the thought process behind this because typically our senses like taste and smell really help us recall a specific event. Like if you smell a perfume that smells like somebody you used to know in your childhood, you'll instinctively remember that, and it is great. However, I would be careful with tips like these because, I don't know, I think she was American, and in a lot of British schools and universities, you're not going to be allowed to eat and chew anything during an exam. So if you're relying on this to get a good grade, then you might come up short when you get your chewing gum taken away from you. But the thought behind it is there, and you could maybe use it in a different way. I'm not quite sure. Please comment below if you have any ideas of how this might be useful. The final point that she mentions is one of my absolute favourites. It used to be something my mum was always telling me when I was younger, that if I'd learned something new that day, I should come home and teach it to them. And it works so well because when you're trying to teach a subject to somebody else, it's when your brain starts to realise the gaps in your knowledge, because as you're trying to explain it, you're really struggling and you're missing out certain key ideas that might not come up if you're just looking at flashcards. So what I would suggest, if you do have a willing partner or friend or family member, just ask them to sit down and listen to you ramble. They don't even need to take in what you're saying. It's more this process of recollection and teaching that's going to help you rather than them reviewing what you've said. And it works so well. I managed to do it throughout my whole A-level exams, and it was when I started using this advice more intensely that I got immaculately better grades than I'd been getting before, because I started to think in a more logical and clear way that you're going to be tested in if you're writing essays, for example, or even when it comes to tests like more statistical knowledge like maths and sciences and languages. It still helps your brain to go through the process of understanding it.
Here's a study hack that actually tricks the brain. I've built multi-million-dollar companies this way. What you do is write down the items that you want to remember that you're studying. Then repeat them out loud, recording them into your iPhone voice recording memos. Then take a walk and listen to it or work out.
So I've heard this idea a lot, and I have tried this before. During my A-levels when I was doing classics, I would try and listen to the audiobooks of the Iliad and stuff so that I could remember the story a bit better and the key points within the timeline. Yeah, I tried to do this when I was going to sleep and I just didn't really find that it worked. I tried it again this week for the video when I was going out on a run to see if that works better, but I don't know if it's personally my brain. If I'm not actively trying to listen to something and take it in, it doesn't go in. So it might work for you, but personally it's a bit of a waste of time, and really when you're going out on a run or something, you should take that as a relaxation break. So this was one of the hacks that I kept seeing come up on TikTok. It was in multiple videos, all kind of reiterating the same formula and timeline for studying. And I absolutely love it. It's so right in the fact that you need to do short bursts of work with a tiny little break in between. However, over the years, I've found that 20 to 25 minutes can be a bit too short a span of work. Hence, in my last couple of videos, which I'll link down below, I suggest rather that you do 50 minutes of work and then a 10-minute break to get up and walk around. Because I find sometimes your brain really only starts working and kicking in after a kind of 15-20 minute period, and that you're cutting yourself off when you're going to be your most productive. But again, that's personal opinion. Some people will have not necessarily shorter time spans, but they will work effectively in the smaller blocks of like time, whereas personally I'm a bit of a slow burner and I need the 50 minutes to properly get my brain working. But again, you're going to end up working the exact same amount of minutes and having the exact same amount of break time, so it's what you work out over time works best for you. The key point that it raises here as well that I hadn't actually thought about before is the idea of getting up and doing something physical around your room for the 5 or 10 minute break. And I think trying this out is an amazing idea, because there's been times where, like I said, I've been on TikTok for that 5 or 10 minute break and it doesn't feel like my brain's been properly refreshed, where if I just even stand up and walk to the kitchen to go get a coffee, it allows your brain to relax a little bit and take yourself out of the work mode momentarily, which means when you do come back to it, you feel properly refreshed and ready to start again. So that is everything from today's video. I've linked the original TikToks in the description down below, so please go and check out these people and give them the appreciation they deserve for coming up with these amazing ideas. And please like and subscribe to support our channel. Thank you, bye!